So today I'm going to talk about the inner opponent within us. And in different traditions, it's called by different names. I've made videos in the past about trickster energy, how to unhook yourself from trickster energy. And I really want to unpack this idea of the inner opponent to convey to you that there are actually a few different attitudes and approaches to work with this energy. It's not a one size fits all. It's not always soft love and acceptance. It's not always, discipline. It's depending on the moment. There must be a sort of intuitive wisdom about how to work with it. So the inner opponent within us, it's an evolutionary force, right? So we are evolving out of survival consciousness, right? Our lower three chakra energy into the heart, right? We are becoming a species that cares more about love than survival, that's in a state of unity consciousness, that recognizes the whole world is my body, the whole, there's one spirit, right? The consciousness shining through my eyes is the consciousness shining through your eyes, and therefore I tenderly revere, respect, and love you in your light and in your shadow. But the inner opponent within us, it manifests in many different ways. It can manifest as unconscious feminine energy, as addiction to sensation, addiction to nostalgia, addiction to manipulation, addiction to seduction. It can manifest in unconscious male ways, ruthlessness, controlling by force, being completely future oriented, whereas unconscious female is more about kind of being stuck in the past. So somebody made a comment on one of my trickster videos that I wanted to kind of respond to, because I think it's it was a valid thing to be said, and I thought to myself, well, I could unpack it better. And that is that, when I say unhook yourself from the trickster, I mean when you catch yourself being stuck in the past, right? Let's say you're getting over a really painful relationship and you've spent a lot of time and effort in the pursuit of self-knowledge and how you created the situation and your part that you played in it and your own shadows that were at play, and you've exercised forgiveness of self and of others, but yet you still find yourself slipping into maybe sadness or nostalgia. That is trickster energy that you can unhook yourself from, in the sense of you can snap out of it and be like, wait a minute, let me come back into the present moment. Because while the trickster is asking us to inquire more deeply into our own self so that we can ultimately arrive at the source of all ignorance, which is not knowing that we are God, right? We only manipulate reality when we believe we are a separate self that needs to manipulate reality. We only seduce people to get what we want because we don't believe we are good enough. We don't understand our inherent value. So these tricksters of the various archetypal energies, right? The seductress, the siren, the prostitute. Yes, if we inquire, what is this really about? Why do I use this energy to get what I want? The answer is always the same, or an iteration of the same theme, which is, I don't know that I am God. So I believe that I have to use my survival energies to control reality, right? So that's kind of the divine masculine way of understanding and inquiry and self-knowledge. And then in the feminine sense, it's like, well, we completely accept and embrace the trickster in us. We completely accept and embrace all of the shadow. And that's part of what the trickster and part of what the inner opponent is trying to teach us. It's trying to teach us discernment so that we are no longer stuck in its influence. It is trying to cultivate within us love that is stronger than the need to stay in survival energy, right? When you get so sick of the suffering that you create for yourself by being a manipulator of reality, you begin to activate the possibility of a higher love for all beings, love for self. So that inner opponent is teaching us love and awareness. And it's actually inspiring the desire to evolve into an entirely new species. So we must love and revere the inner opponent. It is our best friend. However, we must also have the wisdom and discernment to recognize there is a moment where the appropriate attitude is completely just a complete acceptance. Like, okay, there is a politician inside of me. There is that inside of me. There is a murderer inside of me, whether I murder people with my thoughts, with my judgments. There is a part of me, a prostitute, so to speak. I have sold my soul to the devil, for money, for love, for recognition. I've gone against myself in order to get something from the world that I think that I want. And I deeply love and accept that part of me. However, another part of the divine feminine is ferocity, right? Kali. Kali has those 8 severed heads, right, around her neck. They represent the 8 snares that we get stuck in. And I wish I would remember them. What are they? Lust, greed, guilt, shame, right? So while lust, greed, guilt, and shame, if we stop and inquire into them about, okay, what are you here to teach me? Okay, that's one way to work with that energy. But in another moment, the right way to work with the energy is kind of that ferocity to say, no, I will not be stuck in this anymore. It's kind of like when people teach you, like, use one of the portals of the breath and the inner body, and focusing your awareness into your, sensual awareness of the environment. That is a kind of discipline to unhook your energy from the past and the future. It is a discipline. There's a time for inquiry and knowledge, but then you have to recognize, well, part of what this inner opponent is teaching me is to actually have the discipline and have the self-love to unhook myself from these draining energies, whether it's projection into the future or addiction to the past. So the inner opponent, right? The Yetzer Hara, the trickster. Some of the archetypes of the trickster are really difficult to get unstuck from because there's such a huge payoff. And of course, the cause of being addicted to the payoff is always the same, is that we do not know that we are God. We don't know that we are infinite love and infinite intelligence. So one of the archetypes of the trickster that's very hard to overcome is the savior, the saint. Ooh, the saint. Well, that one is rampant in the new age. Love and light, only love and light, right? Or let me save you, let me help you, really, because I feel lost and because I feel completely disconnected from nature. So while we want to take the mirror of the trickster as an opportunity to look into the mirror and inquire, like, what is this really about? There's also this fierce discipline and self-love that says, okay, when I see myself trying to save someone, because it's coming from a place of me feeling incomplete, of me being lost, I'm going to have the discipline to just cut it right there, right? Because I already understand why I'm doing it, but that momentum is strong enough that the energy wants to keep moving. So what the inner opponent is teaching me is to cut the fuel. So in the moment, right, when I go into the savior archetype or the martyr, right, a lot of, the trickster uses spiritual teachings to reinforce martyrdom. And that looks like a lot of people staying in abusive relationships because they have karma to resolve, because they have more lessons to learn. Maybe the lesson is that you need to get the F out of there, right? Maybe the lesson is you're actually free and you don't have to be in a hypnotic trance of a religious idea to keep you in a situation that is harming you. So the inner opponent is teaching us so much. The inner opponent is an amazing phenomenon in consciousness. It is the force of the evolution of us into a new kind of species of human being, and therefore incredibly valuable endlessly valuable and beautiful. However, we have to understand that there's different ways to work with it, and you have to have a lot of intuition and wisdom and a very strong desire to be free in a moment to know how to work with it in the moment. So in some moments, I'm working on cultivating an aspect of my divine feminine, of deep embrace of the fact that I use these shadow archetypes to manipulate my reality. Maybe in this moment, the teacher, the inner opponent, is teaching me self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, acceptance of humanity, acceptance of the shadow, acceptance of the innocence of the shadow. And then in another moment, the inner opponent is teaching me the discipline, right, to sever that addiction. And it's like Dr. Joe Dispenza says, the only time that people actually change is when the amplitude of their decision to change is greater than their addiction to the past. And so the inner opponent is teaching you to reach that amplitude of desire. So again, in a nutshell, the inner opponent is the inner teacher. It is the inner teacher. And it appears as doubt. What does doubt teach us? Doubt teaches us to trust. Doubt teaches us to have the discipline to disidentify from doubt, right? So while it's teaching me to trust myself, while doubt is teaching me to trust myself, if I watch my mind and if I watch it going incessantly into doubt, my inner opponent is teaching me to sever that addiction and to literally unhook myself from it. Like, no, that's just a lie, right? So in one moment, I can go down the wormhole and follow the shadow to its source, which is the unawareness of my true nature. And in another moment, it's just helping me cultivate a quality of discipline, of self-love, of mastery, right? This idea of mastering the astral body, it doesn't conflict. It's not a paradox. It doesn't conflict with complete love and acceptance and inquiry. You just, again, there's a time and a place and a moment for how to approach this energy. What are you trying to teach me, inner opponent, right now? And the answer is so incredibly obvious and clear, because you'll go through periods where your inner opponent softens you, softens and softens and softens you. And then you'll have periods where your inner opponent sharpens your discernment and clarifies your energy and makes your intention stronger and raises the amplitude of the desire for freedom. Just watch it and don't take my word for it. But when I say unhook yourself from the trickster, I'm not saying deny what it has to teach you. I'm saying be aware that in a moment, it's actually trying to teach you to unhook yourself from it. Unhook yourself from the idea that you're a saint, that addiction, an addiction to an identity that keeps you disconnected from your shadow, from your humanity, that keeps you really unable to truly evolve. The addiction to even sadness and depression. Sadness and depression is part of what it's teaching, is to help me accept parts of life, to help me accept loss, to help me accept impermanence, to help me accept cycles, to help me accept the flux, the phenomenal flux of the natural world. However, if I don't have the wisdom to stop telling the stories that keep me stuck in depression, then the inner opponent, then I haven't gotten the lesson. I haven't gotten the full lesson. So it's not a paradox to fully accept the human nature while simultaneously cultivating a mastery to no longer stay completely stuck in it. So I hope this clarifies a little bit about how I view the inner opponent. I love the inner opponent. The inner opponent is the source of everything I share on this on this channel. And I speak from experience because, the way that I've approached these things, which is what I share here, they have really led to tremendous liberation of energy and resolution in my system, and healing of the body, and et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, take it or leave it. But this is the way I understand it. And it's to be revered. It's the sacred teacher. We have the sacred teacher of the shadow archetypes, and we have our higher self. And really, it's like this, it's different aspects of the same thing. If we didn't allow ourselves to fully feel our emotions, if we didn't let ourselves fully feel the pain and suffering of being stuck in a state of being like depression, then we would never reap the benefit of the desire to go beyond it, right? So the first step to really reap the benefit of your evolution is to fully allow yourself to have your authentic experience, and just ask, what is it teaching me? What is it teaching me? There's feminine aspects of the teaching of the inner opponent, and there are more masculine aspects. So I hope this is clarifying and helpful, and I hope you have a beautiful day.